case was a doozy.
I know. Turning in these reports is really annoying. Reports are the most monotonous part of police work, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Gunshots! Oh no!
Ah!
Oh no, Marilyn! Marilyn, are you okay?
I stabbed him. He has slime.
No, Marilyn! Oh no, we lost her! Damn it, we lost her. She's gone.
Who would you, Marilyn, leave her for dead?
Oh, I don't know. But we better start investigating to find out who. Look around for clues.
Well, she did say she stabbed him.
Oh, I guess that's pretty important. Looks like Marilyn didn't go down without a fight.
Well,
there's something about the last words she just said.
yeah. Who would talk about limes?
I don't know. Maybe she's trying to say that limes were the killer's favorite fruit or something?
Only sociopaths like limes.
Oh, that's true. I don't know. What else have to do with limes?
What about Lyme's disease? Chief Cosette, Chief Gale, hello. Haley and I have been working on a new case, and the victim's last word was lime. After some thinking, Haley and I have a hunch that he may have been referring to Lyme's disease.
We think he may have been trying to tell us that his killer has Lyme disease.
Continue.
Well, Lyme disease is pretty uncommon, so if we could get some suspects and develop a way to screen the blood we found at the crime scene from this bloody knife, then we may be able to catch our killer.
The symptoms associated with Lyme disease are flu-like in nature, and any infected individual will have a rash in the shape of a bullseye. Hopefully, this will help us narrow down our pool of suspects.
I've got to be honest. This seems like a bit of a stretch. But you're my best detectives. And damn it! If you've got a hunch, then I've got your back. What kind of screening method will you use?
Well, we did a little digging, and we found that the enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, otherwise known as ELISA, is a relatively inexpensive and quick way to diagnose Lyme disease. We could use that.
Our next stop is the forensics lab to find out more about ELISA.
All right. Now get out of here and go catch that murderer.
Thank you, officer.
All right, Captain.
ELISA assays use enzyme-tagged antibodies to determine if a specific antigen or antibody is present.
There are four main types of ELISA: direct, indirect, sandwich, and competitive ELISA. Each type of ELISA requires the use of a specific ELISA plate, which binds proteins. Direct ELISA is the most straightforward and, well, direct method. First, the sample under study is directly applied to the wells. This means that the wall of the well is coated in proteins from the sample. This includes the desired antigen and undesired proteins. Next, the plate is blocked with skim milk or bovine serum albumin, and an enzyme-linked antibody that is specific for the desired antigen is introduced to the well and allowed to incubate. During this time, the enzyme-linked antibody binds the stationary antigen and is immobilized. The well is then washed with buffer to remove any unbound antibody, and the enzyme substrate is introduced to the well. The enzyme interacts with the substrate, which causes a color change if the antibody is present.
Indirect ELISA determines the presence of antibodies in a sample and is commonly used to diagnose infections. First, a weld plate is coated in the antigen specific to the corresponding antibody under analysis. Oftentimes, plates are purchased already coated in the specific antigen. Next, the sample is introduced to the plate and the desired antibody binds to the stationary antigen, anchoring it to the well. The plate is washed and an enzyme-linked antibody specific to the antibody under analysis is introduced to the well. The well is washed again and the enzyme substrate is introduced to the well. The enzyme reacts with the substrate, which causes a color change that can be observed if the antibody is present.
Sandwich ELISA helps determine the presence of a specific antigen in a sample. First, the well plate is coated in an antibody specific to the antigen under study and is washed with buffer. Next, the sample is added to the well and the desired antigen binds to the stationary antibody, becoming immobilized. The well is then washed again and an enzyme-linked antibody specific for the bound antigen is added to the system. After a final washing, the enzyme substrate can be added to the well and a color change can be observed if the antigen is present. As you can see, the two antibodies bind on either side of the antigen, sandwiching it, thus sandwich ELISA.
Finally, competitive ELISA is used when we want to know how competitive an antigen is for a specific antibody. First, an ELISA plate is coated with an antibody specific to the antigen of interest. Next, before we add the sample to the well, we mix our sample containing the antigen of interest with an enzyme-linked antigen analog. This analog is structurally similar to the antigen of interest and combined competitively to the antibody lining the plate. We will then add the sample reagent mixture to the coated well, and the desired antigen and enzyme-labeled antigen will compete against each other to bind the plated antibody. The well is then washed with buffer, and the enzyme substrate is added to the well. Competition can be analyzed by measuring the change in fluorescence with changing the ratio of enzyme-linked antigen to normal antigen.
So in the case of Lyme disease, an infected patient will carry the Borrelia burgdorferi antigen and will express the Borrelia burgdorferi antigen-specific antibodies. In diagnosing Lyme disease, indirect ELISA is often used because we want to see if the patient exhibits an immune response to the Borrelia burgdorferi antigen by generating these antibodies. So for this case, I think we should use indirect ELISA.
I agree. So what we'll do is we'll coat an ELISA plate with the Borrelia burgdorferi antigen and incubate for a few minutes to allow the antigen to bind the walls of the plate. After washing the wells, we will add a sample of the suspect's blood to the well, and we will incubate it for a few minutes.
Cool. So during the incubation, any Borrelia burgdorferi antigen-specific antibodies should bind the stationary antigen and become immobilized. The well will then be washed again to remove any components of the sample that did not bind the antigen.
Once we have washed the wells, we will add the enzyme-linked antibody that is specific to the Borrelia burgdorferi antigen-specific antibody. We will then wash with buffer and add the enzyme substrate to the well. If the killer does indeed have Lyme disease, there should be a color change in the buffer indicating its presence.
Oh, wow. Well, hot diggity Lyme! It looks like our killer does have Lyme disease.
Now all we have to do is find someone with no alibi and a ring-shaped rash. Should be no problem at all.
Really, truly easy. But first we need to go get some lunch because all this talk of Lymes has me craving some tacos.
This rash is freaking killing me. I don't know what it is.
Anthony! We know what you did.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb with us. We've been investigating a murder, and we found out that our killer has Lyme's disease.
Yeah, that bullseye-like rash on your hand looks like Lyme's disease to me.
Well, you don't understand, okay? Marilyn screwed up my UV Viz data. I had to kill her.
So you had to kill her?
Yeah.
Well, got a confession.
Wow.
You know what happens next.
See if the patient exhibits an immune response to the Borrelia burgdorferi antigen by generating specific antibodies. So for this case, I think we should use indirect ELISA.
I agree.
So what we'll do is we'll coat an ELISA plate with the Borealis engine and incubate for
Pull it together. Pull it together. We're a team. We gotta take this murder seriously. We're trying to catch a killer here. Officer Holt.
So what we'll do is we'll coat. I'm sorry, we need to take.
You wanna redo?
What kind of screening method would you use?
We